Alrighty, let's try to do this a little quickly without messing things up. So, as we attempted before, there was some issue. The issue was that I made things invisible, and in the panic of the moment, I didn't debug that. So, let's assume that I did, and go back to where we were last. So, I was looking at something called Leap Rigged Echo Hands Actor. We were in the event, and we had looked at something called the socket. We were looking at the location, but in fact we want to look at the rotation. And we don't want to look at the rotation as a rotator, we want to look at the value of the roll of your finger and pass it to something called a material collection and pass it as a scalar. And so opening that up here, that's what this looks like. And so all we did was we clicked plus here, generated one of these, and we changed the name to roll. So correspondingly, when we select roll, we're going to pass that value, and that value will be visible in the heat map now. So the heat map involves the difference between these two things as they are compared with either the initial or final. So we want to compare the difference between final to initial as it compares to the final. And so we're going to use a linear interpolate with an alpha value that goes from 0 to 1. We're going to make sure that we have our sign value between 0 and 1, no negatives here today. And we have our roll collection parameter. We're going to divide it by 180 because otherwise it's too sensitive, and we're going to make things pop out a little bit, but maybe a little bit more than usual, so we'll go with 64 here. And the tessellation makes sure that it's high resolution enough so we can see things with a little bit more detail. But how do you do that? Well, if I didn't know where to do that, I would type in tessellation here in the search, and it would show up, and I selected PN triangles and the following values. So you can play with those if you want. But at the end of the day, what does it look like when you do click play? Well, the moment of truth. We have our hand here, and as we roll our hand, different data shows us different things. So we can see some things, we can see some values here, some lines of constant, and that's kind of what we can do with that kind of stuff. We can play with math and see math happening. So what if we did the other one? How would that compare? Well, it would compare not that differently. It's just going to be slightly in a different direction responsive. So here we have our hand, we're rolling, and rolling that way allows us to see those lines, and oh, there they are. So at that level of activity, the heat map suggests that there's some sort of data, there's something here maybe, and so that would allow someone to maybe do more experiments or see that multiple, as here, multiple mice had different responses to different treatments, and just looking at the heat maps you might not be able to tell that there was 1, 2, 3, and 4 lines of constant activity. That is kind of hard to see, but if you're linear interpolating, then everything's good. Alrighty, thank you. Take care. Bye.